It's a thunderclap, a true dynamite against the entire narrative that Madridismo and the press have tried to build over the past years. Because for months, they've repeated ad nauseum that Barça is in ruins, that the club has no way out, that the cool future is mortgaged for decades. Joan Laporta is on the verge of pulling off a move that could change everything. And it must be said outright, what seems today like a rumor, a speculative move, a piece of financial market gossip, could become the master strategy that finally frees FC Barcelona from the chains of fair play and the traps in which those who want to see us on our knees have locked us. If you're an unconditional fan of FC Barcelona, subscribe now because what's coming is insane. Do you think this move could be the club's definitive economic rebirth? We're talking about a possible partnership between Barça and a Saudi Arabian company. Yes, the same ones who have been injecting billions into other state-owned clubs for years, the same ones who have organized World Cups, Super Cups, and tournaments with petrodollar checks, could now become commercial partners of the greatest club in Europe, Football Club Barcelona. And of course, Madridismo can't stand it. They can't bear the idea that Barça, with its history, its style, and its identity, could access an economic source that would balance the scales. Because if there's one thing that has characterized the past 5 years, it's that while artificial clubs inflated their squads with petrodollars and Real Madrid remained the darling of the media narrative, Barça faced audits, appeals, fines, and an endless number of obstacles to compete on equal terms. That's why this topic is sparking debates, destabilizing the dairy farm, a nod to the media, and once again confirming that when Barça makes strategic decisions, they tremble in Chamartin. This move isn't just economic, it's a blow of pride. It's a message to the world. Barça isn't just surviving. Barça resists, reinvents itself, and threatens to dominate world football again with the same force as in the great nights of Guardiola or Cruyff. And of course, there will be critical voices, the same ones who stay silent when Manchester City recruits without limits, when PSG shatters all salary barriers, when Saudi Arabia buys entire competitions. But when it's Barça proposing a legitimate, transparent, and beneficial partnership, suddenly the headlines and moralizing editorials appear. This hypocrisy is the essence that fuels the Kuhl fire. What matters here is that the club, after years of financial anguish, is raising its head again. Laporta has shown that he doesn't back down, that he knows how to navigate through the storm, that he knows how to pull money from where it seems there is none. And if this deal with Saudi Arabia materializes, we'll see how those who predict ruin today will have to eat their words. Barça has been the most scrutinized rival in Europe for years, and it's no coincidence. While UEFA and La Liga allow state-owned clubs to spend obscene amounts of money without consequences, they have relentlessly put Barça under the microscope. From the exceptional revenues of the famous levers to the reinterpretation of financial statements, everything has been a weapon used against the Catalan club. This is how the miserable narrative that Barça is ruined has been fed, a narrative amplified by Madrid-based debates that constantly repeat the same lie. Barça cannot compete, it cannot recruit, the Kuhl cycle is over. The truth is that Barça has been pushed into an unfair situation. It is required to adhere to the one-to-one rule, meaning it can only spend what it earns, while sporting demands, inherited debts, and the construction of the new stadium require a margin that has never been granted. Yet, Laporta and his board have sought every legal loophole, every strategy, every sponsor to keep the club alive, and on top of that, they've managed to recruit decisive players. This is resistance, this is survival, this is being Barça. What Madridismo cannot accept is that even in the worst-case scenario, Barça competes. It bothers them that, despite restrictions and fines, Barça still wins leagues and championships, continues to attract global young talents like YAMAL and GAVI, delivers spectacle with homegrown players, and remains a worldwide reference. Because while the other side enjoys economic freedom disguised as propaganda, we are rebuilding from adversity. It hurts. And that's where the Saudi Arabia factor comes in. If they come on board with a partnership, the balance shifts radically. It will no longer be about surviving, but about challenging. Barça would regain the muscle needed to undertake strategic signings, support competitive salaries, and, above all, silence that toxic narrative of a ruined club. Madridismo fears this more than anything. They live comfortably in their good press, in their federative and refereeing favors, in a media hegemony that protects them from everything. But when Barça finds weapons, they tremble because they know what happens when both clubs truly compete on equal terms. Barça looks them in the eye, beats them in finals, and snatches titles from them. This partnership would be the beginning of that white nightmare. Joan Laporta is a figure hated in Madrid and revered at the Camp Nou for a reason. He embodies cool resistance. When all seemed lost, he returned to the club to prevent it from dying, and his management, though criticized, has been courageous. The latest proof is this €700 million guarantee, money ready to ensure that Barça can meet the Liga's requirements. Tell me if that's not commitment. Tell me which other president would put their personal assets on the line to ensure that Barça's players can compete on equal terms. He's not just any president, he's a true Cule. They've called him a populist, a risk-taker, a demagogue. And yet, each of his moves demonstrates that he doesn't hide, that he seeks strategic partners, that he fights for beneficial deals, that he understands Barcelona is not just any club, it's tied to its supporters, its history, and its city. The guarantees are not just numbers, they are the symbol of a board that refuses to be the Liga's puppet, that raises its voice against Tebas, that denounces the double standards. Because what is tolerated in other clubs is severely punished at Barça. This is the playing field we're on, and yet, we do not surrender. The arrival of a new sponsor, especially with the economic muscle of Saudi Arabia, would reinforce these efforts. Laporta has known how to open doors where none were seen. With Spotify, he managed to keep the accounts afloat. With Nike, he renegotiated in an extremely difficult context. Now, if he adds a Saudi partner, the press narrative would shatter into 1,000 pieces. Meanwhile, in Chamartin, they tremble because they know a strengthened Barça with major revenue won't just regain financial stability, it will also multiply its appeal to top players in the market. And that's when the Madrid narrative starts to wobble. Everything surrounding Barca's sponsors is fodder for malicious headlines. When the partnership with Spotify was signed, they talked about selling the soul, as if other European giants weren't doing the exact same thing. When the Nike contract was renegotiated, they deliberately hid the fact that it was the most beneficial deal in the club's history with a sports brand. And now, faced with the possibility of a Saudi sponsor, voices are already rising, screaming about scandal, contradiction, and loss of identity. The reality is that Barça needs strong sponsors to compete, and a Saudi partnership would be a shield against economic persecution. Didn't Real Madrid sign with Emirates? Doesn't City and PSG live directly off Gulf state checks? The hypocrisy is unbearable. If they do it, it's global expansion. If Barça does it, it's a moral scandal. The Cule difference is that here, we're not selling the club to a state. Barça is seeking a partnership, legitimate revenue, commercial deals without altering its ownership or essence. That's the key. The club remains that of its socios, it continues to vote, it remains what it has always been, more than a club. And that's what hurts the others. This partnership would be framed in Madrid as Barça surrendering to Arab money. But what they won't say is that without these alliances, it's impossible to survive in the current financial jungle of football. And Barça isn't just surviving, it's fighting to return to competing in the elite, strengthening its crest and jersey with brands that guarantee stability. The effect of this move would be twofold: economic, as it would ease fair play constraints, and psychological, as it would demonstrate that Barça doesn't surrender. It even finds international allies despite the harassment. That's what hurts Madridismo the most. Barça is resilient. Barça always comes back. If we analyze it coldly, what's most outrageous is the double standard. No one questions Manchester City's exorbitant spending, inflated by opaque partnership deals. No one dares to raise their voice against PSG and its impossible salaries. UEFA looks the other way, and meanwhile, Barça is dragged before commissions, sanctions, and fines for financial operations that other clubs carry out normally. This isn't regulation, it's persecution. European football is rotten with these inconsistencies. There are teams that literally exist thanks to petrodollars created out of thin air by magnates who use them as toys for international prestige. And no one says anything, but when Barça signs a sponsor in Saudi Arabia, it's treated as an identity crisis. No, gentlemen, this isn't a crisis, it's survival. It's the move that will bring us back to the board on equal terms. The double standard is the weapon of Madridismo and the press against the system. But the more this partnership is criticized, the more the hypocrisy becomes evident. And that's fuel for Cule pride. Every time Barça takes a step forward, the Madridismo media machine ignites like a synchronized army of headlines, debates, and pundits ready to repeat the same script. The protagonist of this script is Laporta. Because Laporta embodies exactly what they hate. They'd prefer a submissive president, docile, incapable of raising his voice against Tebas or UEFA. They'd like a leader who would resignedly accept the role of a second-tier club, mortgaged, indebted, and humiliated. But instead, they found a president who plays offense, who doesn't back down, who publicly denounces double standards, and who, on top of that, connects with the socios and the stands. Since it became known that Barça is moving to conclude possible deals with Saudi Arabia, the Madrid narrative has exploded on all fronts. How is this possible? They say that Laporta, the defender of the club's values, is associating with such controversial capital. And there's the trick. They disguise their fear as moralism. They're terrified that Barça might obtain enough liquidity to balance the books and regain its sporting muscle, because that would mean having Barça back on their heels, fighting for Champions Leagues, recruiting stars, and consolidating La Masia's young talents. It's this fear that drives them, but they disguise it as moral indignation. Why aren't they outraged by Real Madrid, sponsored by Emirates for over a decade, a country whose political model is not exactly a democratic paradise? Why don't they talk about Manchester City, whose support comes directly from the state of Abu Dhabi? And yet, when Barça makes a move, the white machine roars against the loss of values. Enough hypocrisy. Barça isn't selling its soul. Barça is seeking to compete in an ecosystem already contaminated by foreign capital, and the difference is that we remain a socio-owned club, we continue to vote, we remain owners of our identity. The Madrid media narrative is clear. Use Laporta to weaken the club. They know that in the figure of the president, there's a shield, an engine of resistance, a man who has already resurrected Barça once and threatens to do it again. Many mock his style, his explosive phrases, his risky maneuvers, but the truth is that with every move, Laporta wrests meters of life back for Barça. And this time, with the Saudi deal on the table, the enemy press is sweating bullets, because if he pulls it off, it'll be another checkmate by the Cule president against the system that so badly wants to see us sink. Saudi Arabia is today a central player on the global football chessboard. Not only does it recruit players for its local league, but it also organizes Super Cups, sponsors European clubs, and has already managed to move entire competitions to its soil. Barça exploring a partnership there isn't strange, it's logical, because if you don't do it, you fall behind while your rivals sign astronomical checks. Madridismo has tried to sell the idea that this possible partnership is a contradiction with Cule identity, but the truth is that we're talking about legitimate revenue, not tainted competition. Barça won't become a state-owned club. Barça won't change its ownership model. Barça will simply sign a millionaire partnership that would serve to rebalance its accounts and, above all, breathe again under fair play. And what does this mean? It means the summer dramas of player registrations could come to an end. It means that sporting projects like those of YAMAL, PEDRI, or GAVI would have guaranteed stability. It would mean the end of the anxiety of seeing how the league throws obstacles in our path every time a recruitment opportunity arises. And financially, that's pure oxygen for a club that has spent years gasping for air. Of course, there will be controversies. There always are when it comes to Barça. There will be debates, editorials, and social media storms, but behind all that noise lies an uncomfortable truth for Madridismo. If Barça secures a Saudi partnership, its narrative of a ruined club collapses. No more headlines about bankruptcy, no more debate festivals mocking Laporta. What there would be is fear. Fear of a Barça regaining the strength to build winning projects. And beware, this partnership isn't just about money, it's about global visibility. Barça would strengthen its brand in the Middle East, a key region for football expansion. This opens the door to tours, new commercial partners, and fans millions of miles away from the Camp Nou, multiplying the club's economic reach. This isn't surrender, it's strategic survival on a global chessboard that no longer responds to romanticism. Laporta understands this well. If others can benefit from this money, Barça cannot afford to lag behind. And in Madrid, they tremble because they know this is a silver bullet. If Barça pulls the trigger, nothing will ever be the same again. If you're a true Cule, subscribe now, because this is only the beginning. Can you imagine what we could achieve with a Barça that has the financial muscle to compete with anyone? Leave your comments. Let's talk clearly. The great drama for Barça in recent years has been fair play, blocked registrations, impossible signings, operations halted at the last minute, a nightmare. Every transfer window was a shameful spectacle, with the league acting like a ruthless gatekeeper and Barça as the only club to which the rules were applied with almost vindictive rigor. A partnership from Saudi Arabia would change this scenario with a wave of a magic wand. We're talking about immediate revenue, millions that would be recorded as new commercial contracts and would therefore directly enter the league's calculations, allowing Barça to recover the famous 1-to-1 rule. That is, every euro earned would allow for €1 in sporting expenses. Something that seems basic but has been a wall we've repeatedly crashed into. The impact would be dramatically positive. First, it would put an end to the board's personal guarantees, no more putting their own money on the line to fill audit gaps. Second, it would restore Barça's ability to maneuver in the market. There would be no more need to sell players at a loss to register others. The constant humiliation of seeing recruitments frozen for bureaucratic reasons would disappear. Moreover, it would send a political message within Spanish football. It would mean that, despite their attempts to stifle us, Barça has revenue streams that break blockades. If the league expected a resigned club, what it finds is a giant that doesn't surrender and seeks oxygen wherever it can be found. And the message would be even stronger because Saudi money would place Barça not only in a position to resist but with the strength to plan an assault on the European summit. Fair play, which has been used as a whip against us, would ultimately become insignificant, because with a greater revenue stream, the rules would cease to be chains and would become a mere formality. That's what they fear most in Chamartin and the Madrid offices, that Barça would no longer be controlled, that it would no longer be the club they can shackle. A partnership that would rebalance the accounts is the beginning of a new cycle, and in this cycle, Barça would reclaim its leadership position on and off the pitch. Imagine the scenario: Barça, finally freed from financial shackles, moving in the market once again like a giant, not as a club that begs, sells off assets, or improvises, but as a contender capable of competing for the best players on the planet. That's what the Saudi partnership would mean. Today, the club depends almost 100% on LAMINE and smart operations. And while this has given us gems like YAMAL and GAVI, we all know that to dominate Europe again, we must blend the academy with high-level signings. With fresh money, Barça could consider operations that today seem like a dream. Strengthening key positions with world-class stars, consolidating a core of young talents with heavyweight veterans, and keeping the best players without the temptation of selling them for financial adjustments. Imagine no longer seeing players leave because fair play won't allow us to pay their transfer fees or salaries. Imagine no longer seeing rivals snatch away our stars because Barça couldn't match the offer. With a solid partnership, the club would have the ability to secure its new generation and compete for top names without fear of sanctions. The message to players worldwide would be clear: Barça is back. A club that pays, competes, and wins. And in this scenario, the Camp Nou would once again become a dream destination, not just for its history but for its economic ambition. For Madridismo, this is their worst nightmare, because while they boast about their financial muscle as if it were their own merit, the truth is they depend on favors, media narratives, and friendly federations. A strong Barça disrupts the balance of power in Spain and Europe. And if you add to that a golden generation of young players with strategic signings, it's only a matter of time before we dominate the Champions League again and silence the narrative of a ruined club. The Saudi partnership, therefore, is not just a commercial agreement, it's a master key. It's the beginning of a renaissance that would transform Barça into a shark in the transfer market. And when that happens, Madridismo will have no choice but to scream to the heavens, as it always does when Barça beats them on and off the pitch. When Joan Laporta returned to the Barça presidency in 2021, he did so under a climate of devastation. A club financially submerged with debts exceeding €1 billion, unable to register players, with a stadium in a lamentable state, and, on top of that, the pain of having said goodbye to Leo Messi, the greatest in our history, in tears. It was an almost apocalyptic scenario. Many bet that this return would be a failure, that the myth of 2003 could not be repeated, that Laporta would be just another president who came to extinguish the fire without success. But what no one understood, or wanted to understand, was that Laporta had not come to administer ruin but to lead a resurrection. And for that, it took courage, ambition, and a strategic vision capable of destabilizing everyone, because, of course, it was easy to call him a populist, as the white press repeatedly does. It was easy to mock his confidence, his arrogance, his ability to promise greatness in the worst of times. However, the truth is that few leaders in the world of football would have dared to make such risky decisions to restore competitiveness to a submerged club. The famous levers were the first step, a mechanism harshly criticized but one that allowed Barça to survive when it was on the brink of collapse. With these operations, immediate revenue was activated, enabling recruitment, maintaining a competitive team, and avoiding bankruptcy. Madridismo mocked it, but they fell silent when they saw the results. And what were those results? A league title won, a generation of young talents emerging with force, and a club that learned to walk again. Now, we are in a second phase, consolidating a sustainable project, and that's where Laporta's vision comes into play. It's not just about surviving year after year, it's about designing a Barça with the economic muscle to become dominant in the elite again. That's why it's crucial to finalize historic contracts like the one with Nike and explore new strategic partners in places where other clubs have already gone fishing without stigma. The Middle East, Asia, the United States. Laporta isn't just thinking about balance sheets, he's thinking about symbols. For him, restoring the club's greatness is a matter of collective pride. This possible Saudi partnership is part of that strategy. Securing immediate revenue, neutralizing fair play constraints, supporting the new stadium, and, above all, giving the Cul Socio the peace of mind that the club will remain competitive. And most importantly, doing it without giving up ownership, keeping Barça as it has always been, owned by its socios. That's why, when Madridismo and its spokespeople try to discredit Laporta, what they're really showing is fear, because they know that this president, the one who already disarmed them in 2003 with Ronaldinho, can once again arm Barça to shake the world. The strategic vision is clear: oxygen now, muscle tomorrow, titles afterward. Laporta always plays the long game. They only attack him because they fear his plan might work again. Many forget that Barça is not just a football team, it's an omnisports club, an empire of sections that shine in multiple disciplines. We are the Barça of Xavi, but also the Barça of basketball winning Euroleagues, the Barça of handball dominating Europe, the Barça of rink hockey lifting cups, the Barça of Aitana Bonmati reigning in women's football. That's our pride. We are more than a club, literally. But this greatness comes at a cost, and in recent years, the lack of stable revenue has hit these sections hard. The application of fair play across the entire sports entity has led to painful cuts. Basketball had to sell key players. The women's team saw expensive stars leave for England, and handball faced unthinkable budget adjustments in a club that has always been a reference. The reason is that all the numbers ultimately depend on what the league imposes on the first men's team. That's the injustice. While other clubs only have to balance the books for a men's team, Barça carries an entire multisport ecosystem. And yes, of course, we're proud of it, but it also costs us when the revenue isn't enough. That's where a Saudi partnership becomes more than just money for transfers. It's stability for the sections. It means that the women's team, which has already conquered Europe, can continue to retain its stars and, at the same time, nurture the future with the Women's Academy without financial drama. It means our basketball team won't have to give in to market pressure every summer. It means that the total pride of our jersey in all disciplines will become imposing once again. Madridismo, as always, tries to reduce us to a caricature, a ruined club that can't recruit. What they don't understand is that Barça is so much more than that. We are champions in stadiums, halls, and fields across Europe. And this pride will only be maintained with real stability, with powerful revenue. A partnership like this would allow us to look our sections in the eye and say, "Don't worry, Barça remains your refuge. The club will protect you, continue to compete, and continue to win." That's what Saudi Arabia would bring, the possibility of securing the greatest omnisports club in the world. And that's another difference from Madrid, whose obsession is only with men's football. We are a plural identity, and this identity needs stability. With this agreement, we would take a giant step toward that goal. Criticism will not be lacking, we're already seeing it. Every step Laporta and his board take is caricatured by internal opponents, the Madrid press, and Twitter gurus who confuse moralism with hypocrisy. They say Barça is selling its values by negotiating with Saudi Arabia. No, gentlemen, what sells its values is the one who gives up its model for a check, and Barça has never given up being a socio-owned club. That's the key point the critics refuse to accept. Barça signing a Saudi partnership does not mean becoming a state-owned club. It does not mean giving up ownership. It does not imply renouncing elections. It does not mean handing control over to foreign money. It means signing a commercial contract like any other, like Nike, like Spotify, like Rakuten in its time. Money in exchange for advertising and marketing agreements. Nothing more, nothing less. The rest is pure media intoxication. Moreover, what alternative do the critics propose? To surrender, accept that the rules are designed to stifle us, and resign ourselves to being a second-tier club. Barça never surrenders. Throwing in the towel over values, while rivals crush us with billionaire-funded signings, would be the real suicide. And Laporta knows it. The strongest response will come with time, when Barça, strengthened by this revenue, returns to compete at the highest level. When we see those magical Champions League nights again, when we lift titles once more as an expression of resistance. On that day, the critics will be exposed, because what they call a moral scandal today, they will call strategic mastery tomorrow. It has happened before. They mocked the levers. Today, they acknowledge that without them, we wouldn't have survived. They will mock the partnership, but when we are back on top, they will have to fall silent. The greatness of Laporta and Barça lies in not fearing criticism. Because what drives the club is not headlines, but cool passion, the conviction that our history cannot be reduced to ashes. That's the answer. Facts. Victories. Titles. And to achieve them, we need resources. Words. The wind will carry them away. Trophies will stay in the museum forever. In the 1980s, during times of doubt and rare titles, Johan Cruyff arrived with a philosophy that changed football forever. In 2003, after disastrous seasons, Laporta returned to spark the flame with Ronaldinho, Deco, Eto'o, and later, Guardiola. In 2021, after the Bartomeu disaster and Messi's farewell, it seemed the club was heading for bankruptcy. But today, we stand tall with a promising future. The symbolism of this possible Saudi partnership fits into this historical logic, another step in the chain of resurrections. What seems like an economic urgency today will tomorrow be remembered as a turning point. With this revenue, Barça will secure the survival of its sections, protect its academy, retain its gems, and return to intimidate all of Europe. That is the Kuhl legacy. We never surrender. They tried to defeat us under dictatorships, in economic crises, through unjust referees and sanctions, through the loss of stars. And yet, we are still here, because Barça is a cultural, political, and sporting resistance. Every time they try to bury us, they forget one thing. We are millions of Kuhls around the world with infinite pride. Our rivals don't understand this because they weren't born in adversity. They are established powers, institutional favors, and ease. We are constant struggle. That's why, when we come back, we do so with renewed strength. The Saudi partnership will be remembered in this light, as a controversial, criticized, and hated move by rivals, but one that will return Barça to where it belongs, at the top. Once again, Barça finds itself at this historical inflection point where the world believes we are defeated. Once again, the club's enemies speak of ruin, impossibility, and announced failure. And once again, the Kuhl response is the same: resistance, courage, and rebirth. This possible partnership with Saudi Arabia is not a contradiction of our essence. It is pure proof of who we are, a club that never kneels. While others have been bought, while others are puppets of states and magnates, Barça remains that of its socios. What belongs to us is not for sale. It is to survive boldly in a system that would prefer to see us drowned. With Laporta at the helm, we know this well. We have weathered the harshest storm and come out alive. Now, with this move, we can shift from resistance to conquest. An agreement of this magnitude would rebalance the accounts, secure our gems, give oxygen to all our sections, and restore Barca's ability to face the elite head-on. And that's where the white fear begins, the fear in Europe, the fear in every hostile debate. Barca raises its head again, because no matter how many times they hit us, no matter how many times they try to bury us, history always places us in the same spot, on top, winning, setting the pace. And when this partnership materializes, it will be another Blaugrana resurrection that will echo around the world. Barca always comes back. If you're a true Kuhl, this is your moment. Subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this deal will mark the beginning of a new era? Or that, once again, Barca will show the world that no one can bury us? We already know the answer. Barca never dies. Barca always comes back.